How we doing, people? Yeah, let me just get set up here. Hope everybody's well. So, got a few things in the title. Obviously, we'll have a wee discussion about some of that, but I'm going to be opening up. So, first and foremost, if anybody wants to join me, to just make sure I get that one. Aye. The email address above my scalper. If you want to join and take part in the discussion, you need to email the email above me right now. I'll return your email with a direct link to a hangout. So, let's get on. So, chop. What else do I need? Spare with me a wee second here. I don't know what a wee second is. But just let me get set up, and that's me. Right, I need that. So just a wee quick overview before I go any further for anybody who may come across this. You're asking the question what people like myself are all about. As I said before, I used to have the term flat earth in the title of the videos, but the reason that I used the term flat earth was because it was trending at a time when hardly anybody was talking about this subject, and I could see that there was obvious and deliberate attempts at hijacking it to inject it with propaganda, the usual muddying of the waters of absolute nonsense. So for me, in realising how important that this topic actually is, and I'll get to the reasons for why, I decided to step up to the mark and have a different voice to what I seen going on, because there was far too much of the propaganda. As I say, people were not fully understanding the subject at hand. They were jumping in, people were adopting strawman flat earth models, cartoon discs and ice walls and domes and pizza dishes, and again, coming from the mentality of we have everything figured out. This is the culture that we've been born into, this portraying that human beings are so advanced that they've figured out the whole universe, and we have answers for everything. So people have carried on that type of mindset and jumped straight into thinking that they have to have something to offer. It's very simple. If somebody makes a claim to you as a human being, I'm speaking to you as an individual now, somebody makes a claim to you on an individual level, and you can obviously, say, well, there's nothing to support that. There's no measurable proof of the claim that you're making to me. That, because you can negate a claim, does not mean that you should have something else to replace the affirmative claim that's being made to you. You have the right to stand in an open field and say you do not know. That is the only honest position that anybody involved in this can and should be taking. The claim of our culture, our society, is that we have groups of men and women and institutions professing that they have a God's eye view of our earth and that they're portraying it to be a spherical object. We were born into that. I am under no obligation to replace that obviously faulty claim with a model or a conception of our full reality. That requires an exploration. That requires the majority of human beings addressing and turning every stone of assumption that they've held to be true in regards to what they think this reality actually is. So I do not offer up a replacement for your cartoon that is the globe. Okay? I can make the statement from my own direct experience of reality, my understanding of the physical nature of substances, I can understand it from the practical applications and the geometry that we assume that the earth is demonstrably a level plane. There are undulations, high points and low points. These are determined from a level. Now, a level does not mean a reworking and a mathematical definition. A level is a level, means from one point to the other, there is no deviation in elevation. That's what a level line means. That's what we use in engineering, construction, all practical applications. The only place that the other definition exists is in the conceptual, abstract notion of the globular earth, where they have to redefine natural axiomatic truths like level. So I can make that statement that the earth is demonstrably level, and anybody who wants me to remove my common senses, my direct experience of my everyday reality, and ignore that for an absurd notion, better have something fantastic to offer me. Now, that fantastic thing is not an image. And the other problem that people have is that they give too much credence to an image. What has happened is that people have been presented with a concept, it has been backed by an image, and a language has then ensued to try and describe and explain away natural phenomena in order to make it fit a conceptual image. That's not how it should work. What individuals should be basing things on is their direct experience of what they can quantify, test, measure, observe for themselves. No with a preconceived bias of an imprinted image that you're then going to set out to try and make everything that you find fit your image. That's exactly what the globe does. It's not a quantifiable three-dimensional object, it is a concept. It exists only on paper as an abstract theory. It's not a tangible three-dimensional thing. Okay? Regardless of what you think that image is showing you. I give no credence to images on my TV screen whatsoever. Particularly when that image is depicting my reality contrary to what I experience from day to day. I am not going to ignore my God-given senses, if you like to call it that, whatever that may mean. Know that I'm a religious man. It's just a turn of phrase for people to understand what I'm talking about. My constitution, if you like. I am not going to throw that out the window because a group of men and women can show me artistry through a TV screen. That's the difference. A branch of physics, if you can even call it physics, it was more like metaphysics, has been created by use of language in order to support a total absurdity. It's happened through generations, through incremental steps, and people now think they've got an understanding of this abstract notion that they live on a nature-defying oblate spheroid. I don't need your language. I don't need your images on a screen. As a human being, you require no language in order for me to understand some physical aspect of my objective reality. All that it takes is for you to be able to demonstrate things to me in a practical fashion. If you cannot demonstrate what it is you're trying to claim to me in a practical fashion, I have to take you as either confused or deliberately trying to deceive me. So, we stand in the field. As far as I'm concerned, the globe is utter garbage. It's the psychological foundation of all human beings. Human beings are jumping about the branches of the trees without ever discovering the trunk and the roots of what they're actually jumping on. That's what we need to get back to. Human beings are running before they can walk. You do not know where you are. You do not know what you are a part of here. These questions are unanswered. Therefore, anything that you're calling a life, anything that you're investing yourself in, regardless of how good it makes you feel, is purely delusional. You are substituting actual knowing of your direct reality and a further deeper understanding of what you're a part of. You're substituting that for concepts and ideas. Reality is the thrill. Exploration of your immediate reality is the real thrill. No chasing an idea of stature, hierarchy, your job, your hobby. What is this you're a part of? If you don't have those questions answered, what are you up to? You're a hypnotised monkey, is what you're up to. And just because it's familiar and you think you've got a grasp on it, doesn't mean to say that it has any grounds in real objective truth in regards to the bigger picture of what you are involved in here. So human beings are born into this hypnotic cult that's teaching you that they've got all the answers figured out. And what I can see is that the whole shebang is there to stifle you from the religious ideologies to the same ideologies that they present as science. Are there to stifle your creativity. They're there to stifle your explorative nature, your inquiring nature. These things are keeping you still. Internally, externally, physically, metaphysically. They're constraining your natural flow. So, it's about time people let it go and start admitting to themselves a bit of intellectual honesty of how little they actually know or what they're a part of. Be a skeptic. Don't just take it on hearsay because it's presented to you as science. Science says I'm a hairless monkey on a wee potato rock spinning about a vacuum. Therefore science says so, so that's what I believe. That makes you an absolute fucking idiot. Snap out of it. There's a reason why there's so much fucking dysfunction around you. You better start tracing that to the very fundamentals of all reasoning processes and realise that there's a void there because you don't have a fucking clue where you are and what you're a part of. You're jumping on the bandwagon, clutching at straws, desperately trying to attain certainty that you're never going to find because you're chasing an idea. So, if you want to discuss with me the nature of our reality and what it actually is, fair enough. I have expressed numerous times what it takes to convince a man of myself, or what it will take for me to accept something as being part of my objective reality. I accept nothing else. I don't want religious rhetoric and mantras and buzzwords and expressions of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Everything else I'm willing to discuss. I'm no big in politics. I overview these things as a total fucking nonsense. Mental illness. One aspect trying to control and dominate another aspect. Another huge problem that human beings need to face up to. An understanding and a separation of your own subjective experience and what is objectively true. What we see in the world is groups of subjectivity trying to dominate and control other groups of subjectivity and turning the whole thing into a big massive shite show. Who has the right to be behaving like that? Maybe everybody has the right. Does that make it correct? Does that make it beneficial to us? Not fucking well does not. Look at the state of the shithole. Oh, we're so advanced though. I've got wee gadgets and I can phone my pal and Timbuktu and all that. Well fucking done. How does your mind work? Fuck. I don't know. What's on the telly? Fuck it. I'm going to the cinema. This is the complex machinery. This is the technology that you better get to grips with. Because you're using it naively. And through your naivety, your attention and your will is being directed and coerced onto utter fucking crap to the detriment of yourself, your immediate family and the majority around you. It's only benefiting a few. So fucking snap out of it. Quick style. Let's enjoy and embrace the real endeavours of creativity and expression and exploration and start finding out what the fuck this place actually is. Because I tell you what, again, it's not what's being portrayed to you. You're seeing cartoons, you're seeing images on a screen. That's deliberate, to throw you off the scent, to make you think it's all been discovered and there's nothing else, therefore I'll just clutch at my ideas and my concepts that make my fuses good and I'll die. Irresponsible. Get a grip. Anyway, if you would like to join me, as I say, email above the axe wound. I'll wait for Gav and we'll talk a wee bit about force and consciousness and the prime mover and all that. They did learn. They did learn how to hack your brains, Ali. That's exactly what's going on. That is the game at hand. What you are is an awareness. You are an intent, a will. And you can direct that anywhere you want. And if you don't understand and you're not aware of it, it can be directed for you. You see this on a small scale when you see entertainers, guys like Derren Brown, who use misdirection and various other tactics in order to make people behave in ways that they have absolutely no memory of. This machine that you are occupying, if you like, is an intricate piece of technology. So you better understand how to recognise yourself within it and understand the processes of the machine. Okay? Because if you don't, then again your will, your intent is going to be directed onto utter nonsense. Well, actual reality slips by. Well, this is the whole thing, Sammy Shaw. Democracy, communism, blah, blah, blah. They're all creations of a society. An idea of us living together as a unit. Now, people have to ask why that even came about in the first place. And is it any use to us? Really? So it all comes into your attention. Whatever you place your attention in, whatever you buy into, you will be subject to your own creation. And I mean that internally. I don't mean new age spiritual bollocks about you making reality change and all that kind of stuff. You can make your reality change internally. And physically, by interacting with the physical world, you can make change in it. Okay? But you have to understand what you're emotionally investing in, what you're putting your intent into, your goals, your aspirations. What are they about? Hello everybody. Tracy Storia, how are you doing? Bates, Nicholas, Squirrel Sniper, Trackmatic, how are you doing? Well, Trackmatic, biological knowledge, I think there's certain aspects of that. We can see it surrounding us. You know, always use reptiles as a prime example of that. You know, a reptile will lay eggs, it'll fuck off. The eggs will be born and those little creatures know what to avoid and what they need to do and what they need to get up to. Groupthink, telepathy, I think for me these are the aspects of the real fundamental language that is primary to the spoken word. For me, the spoken words are retardation of the prime language. First and foremost, before I even speak literal words to a man who speaks a totally different language, there is a subtlety to the real prime language that I read into, and so does everybody else, regardless of whether you're in tune with it or not. That is our language. That is what's of real use to us. Reading intent, expression. Okay? As I say, I don't need to, I'll use a lighter from a recent thing. Saying lighter is just bleh. It's just a noise. You need an actual thing. If you don't speak my language, I can go. Then you can go. Then you'll know what I'm fucking saying to you. Some people will say that's the best I've ever said. I'm sure there'll be people out there that will love to utilise that. Don't mention any names. But they will say that's the best 2 sentences that have ever come out my accent. We get too caught up in language and our attachments to what it means. Again, language is a tool that you can utilise or it can be used against you, depending on your attachments to it. Okay? So, when we started that pish, wherever that came from, it retarded us. Because we're no longer in touch with the natural language. Tell what if consciousness only makes us feel we are more than our body and experience? Well, again, why would a biological machine create a separate wee aspect of it? Then has to deceive, like some sort of split personality. None of that. I've had these discussions with people like that before. Our consciousness is just an illusion. It's a coping mechanism. Well, who's having the illusion and who's it to cope for? Who's having to cope? We're still back at the same problem again. So I understand what you're saying, but it's pretty empty, Why would it want to make itself feel that it was more than it was? Why would there ever have been a necessity for that conscious aspect in the first place? Because it would be its detriment. The body or the biological mechanism now has to work in a different fashion in order to accommodate this fucking needy, unhinged aspect of its own being. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Right. So while I'm waiting, I'm just going to read through the chat box right now and see what's happening here. See Oddity, Boris Chops, Mike Cozy, Selenelian, how you doing? Brandon Cook, Squirrel Sniper, Mike Cozy, I said that, Nicholas, Lee Redpath, Wes, One Conscience. A biological body is a machine, fine tune it and we can run as intended, exactly, embrace it, understand it. For me, there is a separation. I identify the powers that I actually have within this biological mechanism. And the only power that I have is to direct attention. I can go on autopilot and the attention will just be pulled left, right and centre by the flood of thoughts that are coming through the processing unit. Or I can say, hold on a minute, fuck that autopilot shit. I'm going to direct my attention to where I will it to be. TMF, Gary Lamazuri, Flatman, how you doing? Ryan N. Tony T, ABCD, Dave Finkel, how you doing? And all sadly there's still people that believe they live in a spinning water rocket space ball. Exactly, mate. It's fucking absolute preposterous. Well, Nicholas, many people think so. That it's just one pond among many ponds in an infinite flat plane. I don't know where they're getting that aspect from infinite flat plane from, but other areas I can get on board with. As I've spoken about this before, there are so many variants of biological life, particularly in humans. The different races, the distinct different races of people. The bullshit that they try and hit us with about, common ancestors and all that garbage. Well, you know, all that information had to be present from the very off. So we're all descendants from some mightily complex, more advanced being than ourselves. That's pretty much what they're saying. That has to be the case. You're not getting new variations of information randomly appearing from fucking nowhere through mutations. Mutations don't add new information. So, I've postulated that a few times. Is it a case of some petri dish experimentation type thing? Or was there a necessity for us to end up like this, where different aspects of biological life ended up in the one pond or the one place or area through whatever means, and that was never the natural flow of how it was? I mean, I don't know. It's all open. It's all up for speculation, but that's all it can be. You know, these people that are making affirmative claims to know what's actually went on are lunatics, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe a quarantine zone pragmatic. Very well, maybe so. Again, people have to think about that. What if there's other advanced, areas? Would you really want us retarded fucktards getting in and poisoning that with our narcissistic fucking selfish tendencies? No, would you fuck? Because any advanced civilization would have moved beyond this, need to dominate and control and subdue other aspects of biological life. I certainly wouldn't want that infecting my advanced, superior civilization. So it's another possibility. Globe proof still zero. Exactly. FPV Angel. Again, beyond this point, there is no dichotomy. These people who are trying to perpetuate dichotomies of the dimensions of our Earth, there only is one objective reality as far as I can fucking make out. So what is there to be debating? Again, when you're seeing people requiring and utilising problematic and sophisticated, idiotic language, and building upon that, language upon language upon language, to try and confirm a wee biased notion that they're clinging desperately to. You know that there's an issue. Because just as I pointed out, do you need a language? Oh. Do you need language? Something's real, fucking show me it. Bring it to me. Demonstrate it. I'm a clever man. I have a very practical mind. Regardless of what your expertise is, if there's some mechanical function to it, there must be a mechanical function to it. I will understand it. As soon as you start fucking trying to waffle complex, sophisticated language at me, I know you're an absolute cockend. Right up your own ass. You need to wind your neck in and snap out of your little fucking delusion. So I don't give a fuck if you're PhD Superman. Right? And that goes for everybody else. You should have the exact same attitude. You have your own discernment. You are the scientist. You are the mind and the ability to understand practicality. Everybody has it. What's getting in the way? People have bought into this pseudo-intellectualism and sophisticated of language and shits and ties and mannerisms and all that. So they must be intelligent. Fuck off. But there is a use, there's guys like Steve HV there is a use for understanding these morons and their sophistication. Because you can combat them with their own use of the spoken word by understanding the mechanisms that they utilise and what they're actually meaning. But that doesn't mean to say you're an intellectual either. It just means that you're coming down a level in order to understand these fucking morons. These fucking absolute desperate idiots that think they're something, but they're turning the whole place into a shite show. So I'm going to roll my smoke, and then I'm going to set up the first hangout, and I'm going to check my emails. Exactly, Trackmatic. It's a fucking total shambolic mess under the guise of super intellectuals. 14.5 billion years ago, and all that stuff. Well, there may very well be things that we're not attuned to, Veritas Rising. But just as I've spoken about before, there's no such thing as a void, there's no empty space, there's no such thing as a nothingness. Everything is interconnected, whether you like it or no. Something has to be involved with something else. No voids, no emptiness, no nothingness. Right. So if you're going to put questions or anything in that chat box, just wait until I'm back and my attention's on it, Gal. I'm just going to send you a wee link right now. Once I would gather in here and we get a wee kind of look at some of the things here, I'll get straight to the emails and open up. Right, so I see there's a few in here. Right. That's a good one, Trackmatic. I asked a student today, if there was only me and you and we both had gravity, which direction would the plumb bob point? Birds did indeed chirp. Gav, that link's sent. Did you get it? Mathematics has been championed in the form of abstraction that's wandered away from direct reality with our fucking explanations of magical forces and energy transfers and, you know, this fucking garbage stuff without geometric shape and form to it, you know, just utter nonsense. Wee tiny space balls, big massive space balls and voids and empty spaces in between and all that. And in the void and the empty space between, there's magical, mystical stuffs. Black holes and counter space and all that fucking crap. Dark matter and dark energy and all that more. Sounds like a fucking Hollywood movie script, if you ask me.
How you doing, man?
How's it going, mate?
Ah, sound. Happy Sunday and all that.
Yes.
You look as though you've got a bit of sunshine.
Aye, for a wee change.
Oh, yes.
For a wee change, for fuck's sake, this is doing that again. Hold on, mate. I need to shut all that down.
Do you want me to tab back in?
No, it's just so that I can, when I share the screen, it connects to the hangouty thing. So that should be us now. Right, wait a minute. I don't need to be there. Right, that's us now, mate. How's it going?
Right.
You alright?
Ah, good. Aye.
So, I think you should kick it off with your wee puzzle.
So, okay, a wee puzzle for everybody. Yeah, why not? Let me just do that then. Hold on. Let me share my screen. Where the hell was it? Here we go. So, that's the right one day. Oh, fuck.
I've got you present anyway, so it should come up, no bother. You need to screen share. You're no screen share. Ah, there you go.
Screen share now, though, right?
Yeah.
Sound. Aye. This was just a wee how should I say, blast into the past, and the idea behind this was to show some of the, how should I say, the previous philosophers, natural philosophers, or physicists, or mathematicians, and their thinking a couple of hundred years ago, Dale, and to show that a lot of the topics that are being discussed now in this age, on this platform and on other platforms, have still not been solved. And it was just to show a little bit of how some of the, let's call it, people thought in the past, and how that might relate to the way we think now. And hopefully it triggers some provocative thought. Yeah. So I'm going to show some quotes of certain people. And the question is just, who is this guy that's saying these things, right? And it might be, a little bit of a puzzle for people afterwards to realize who it is, and what this man stands for. So I'll just jump right into it. So this man was talking about natural science. His most famous book is one called Mechanica. And he talks about the role of mechanics in natural philosophy. So mechanics is all about the motion of bodies, basically, right? Of physical bodies. And the other thing that really interests him was, what is the actual essence of a material body? And he basically came to the conclusion that, the commitment to all causes of change and motion must be through contact of some kind. Yeah. And we've talked about this a couple of times, privately and also online here, Dale. That it's obvious that there must be something that is making contact with something else across a specific surface area to apply some kind of pressure or whatever, right?
A push.
So a push, exactly. So, so what this guy's book was all about was dividing, if you like, natural science into kind of three things. One was talking and looking at the bodies that are at rest, which is what you would call statics. That might be like a house, You talk about the statics of how these things are built, for example. And then mechanics, which is the bodies in motion, And one of the big things that, he said also was that, metaphysics has its place, right? Even though it has nothing to do directly with material physical bodies, we have to reason about that to understand what the truth is of 1 and 2 and where they come from. So that's kind of preoccupied with the nature and the properties. And metaphysics helps us because these investigations aren't necessarily trivial, looking at statics and mechanics. So what he did was he kind of started off looking at points And then he went on to look at forces and motions and rigid bodies and fluids and then gases. And, his take on the whole thing was that there is a kind of internal mechanical connection in these bodies.
Yeah.
And obviously he applied mathematical principles, whereas that's the word function. When you see the word function, it usually means some kind of mapping or relation between two things, right? It's what mathematicians talk about all the time.
Yeah.
But he looked at the thing as a kind of internal mechanical connection. And when he was thinking about what is the actual essence of a body, then this guy thought about four things: impenetrability, extension, which is, if you like, the figure and the shape; mobility, things in motion; and the way things persist if they're already in a state of motion. So you have these four candidates, if you like, for the essence of matter. And one of the things that's important for him is the well-known fact that two bodies cannot occupy the same space at the same time, which is absolutely obvious to everybody who lives, right? That's not possible. So he basically came to the conclusion that impenetrable or impenetrability is the essence of matter. So you have to look at the matter and understand whether can you actually go through it. Is it in some way, blocking your path? In which case, if it was blocking your path, you'd need to push it out of the way, for example.
Yeah.
And that all these candidates, the other candidates, all really depend on this essence of impenetrability. And he went further and he said that bodies can basically have two different kind of things. So there can be coarse matter and there can be subtle matter. Coarse matter being, objects in the real world that we fully understand, trees, rocks, all that stuff. And subtle matter being something very fine, which we cannot see, which we cannot necessarily feel. Yeah. And that's what he called the ether. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, he went on to do fairly complex theories about how the ether behaves, even going as far as to being able to describe the gravity, i.e. the appearance we have of things falling and appearing to attract each other. Now, we know it's nonsense that masses don't do that, but his postulation is that basically the ether is like a pressure, and because it's being moved in certain directions, it actually obeys this 1/r² relation, which is, if you like, the fundamental behind how we describe gravity nowadays. So he had a complete on on these properties of bodies and how they move towards each other or move away from each other, and he describes it all in terms of there has to be an ether, and within this ether there were mechanical forces pushing it.
Yeah.
So that's, if you like, just as a kind of summary. He was also of the opinion that this subtle matter is everywhere, that it invades all the pores of bodies and surrounds us all the time.
Yeah.
And that it's elastic in a way. It has a permeability. You can push it around and it will deform and shape, but at the same time, it's not necessarily penetrable, but it is elastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
He also said that, as far as he was concerned, there is no such thing as a void. All of space is either filled with these bodies of matter or with the subtle stuff, the ether stuff.
So just to clarify that for people, even in your perception of everyday reality right now, you're looking at objects around you and you perceive what you would call a space between. But there has to be something connecting you and those other things. Because there is no such thing as a void, there is nothingness. There is no nothingness between you and everything else that is a part of your existence. So when they're talking about the ether, that's what they're referencing, that everything's connected by this ultimate medium.
Exactly. Now, he says, this is one of his quotes, given that the world is a plenum, we can ascribe all change to the change through contact.
Yeah.
So anything that's changing has to be coming in contact with something.
Yeah.
He said gravitational attraction is not a property of bodies. There is no such thing as gravitational mass or gravitational force, but this appearance of bodies moving towards each other or departing or, falling has to do with an unequal pressure of the ether and things being pushed And that net excess of pushing forces is what we call the weight of a body.
Yeah.
So if you like, an explanation through relative density would be another way of looking at it.
Yeah. So,
and all changes through contact.
So anything that's in motion or anything that's put into motion has to have something pressing or pressurising on something else. All motion is created by something pushing against it. There has to be a source that's pressing against something else. These ideas and notions of pull, as I say, are just a concept of bringing something closer to yourself. You would describe as pull. But, you know, the mechanics, the actual physicality of making something come closer to you is always push. Whether you're opening the door inwards towards yourself or pushing it outwards, you know, both. If you put your handle on the inside of the door, you're pushing on the inside of the door handle in order to bring the door towards yourself. So that's just describing, pull just describes bringing something closer. Push describes something going further away. But in both cases, there has to be a source of pressure applied. Pushing. Sorry, Gav, I just want to clarify these things as you go through it.
No, it's absolutely correct. That's why we're doing this dialogue.
So when you get morons trying to invoke invisible magic stuff, so of a pullingness, you know, that's utter bullshit. There's no such thing as that. If something's moving towards something else, something has to be applying a pressure to it. That's just a fact. You can play with your reality in every aspect of it and you will never break it.
Yep, and I think your examples of a tow bar, or you know, pulling a handle, or understanding also the the way your arm works.
Yeah,
all these things are great examples. And if you look closely, they're all pushes. None of them pull.
Mm-hmm.
And see the word I underlined here, plenum. So I had to look this up myself. So let me just show that. So what does the word plenum actually mean? The word plenum may refer to a chamber intended to contain air, gas, or liquid at positive pressure. So a containment of some sort.
Yeah.
Planism is basically the concept that nature abhors a vacuum. What we've been saying, there's no such thing as a void.
Yeah.
A plenum is an enclosed space. Plenum physics is a space completely filled with matter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what this guy's saying when he talks about plenums is some kind of containment. And funnily enough, the physics and the mathematics works just fine in a plenum if you postulate something like an ether, which unfortunately is something that has been thrown out with the bathwater in modern physics. Yeah. Now, you know, I'm just going to state boldly that, you know, I believe in an ether. Yeah, there's no other conclusion you can really come to. Yeah. And I'm not alone in that fact. You know, I could list a whole bunch of names like Faraday, Thomson, Maxwell, Heaviside, Steinmetz, a whole bunch of people who, you know, there was an ether and that's the only explanation of natural science. Mm-hmm. And the idea that there's some kind of absolute empty space is total bunk, total nonsense.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it's abstract. You know, people in their reality will never experience a void, a nothingness, a place where no thing exists. It's total bullshit. So why would it ever be incorporated into these abstract theories and concepts of our existence? That's a question people need to ask. Again, going back to what I said at the start of this, you know, we take things on how reality actually functions and what we can demonstrate practically to each other and what we know to be true. But yet when it comes to these fucking god figures of mathematics, all of a sudden we're talking about fucking counter space and empty space and voids and dark matter and black holes and all this fucking garbage.
Yep. And it's very much a modern phenomenon, Dale. You know, 100 years ago, people were thinking very differently about it. Mm-hmm. And as you said, they've managed to transform the education. They've given us new words and concepts that we latch onto. But, you know, people were thinking about this very differently 100 years ago. Yeah. In fact, you know, when Einstein and Darwin came out with their theories of evolution and curved space-time, people were on the streets, you know. People were, you know, like literally, you know, against it, you know, but for some reason, none of that's reported. And, you know, the academia has come to accept it. And now we all accept it as the norm. Yeah. But these things were preposterous when they came out to people. Absolutely preposterous.
Bold bullshit repeated over and over again with a bold attitude, and eventually people have fucking swallowed it. You know?
Aye. New generations that don't know their history, that, you know, haven't looked, I mean, one of the things that we've talked about a few times is this, you've said it brilliantly, an idea of component fitters. People go and they learn equations, but they don't really know where these equations come from, what the history of them is, or what the philosophical thinking is behind them. So, people just get lost in this, modern world of believing the TV and whatever they've been taught. Without giving the past a thought, So
spooky language. And people have got a Stockholm syndrome to the spooky language because it's been presented to them as some sort of truth, So they just bow to things that they don't understand, and you're not supposed to understand it because it's total crap.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just say there's only a couple of more slides, but just to finish this, so a body is pushed or pressed by others because of the fact that it's impenetrable, right? So, I mean, at some point, something's got to give, something's got to deform.
And
people will have...
Sorry, I just want to interject and add into here, because again, as I've experienced numerous times through my life, when you're contemplating and you're thinking through your own processes and analysing your own reality, you come to certain junctions or certain realisations through your own workings. I was never academically trained, didn't give a fuck about school, never had people run about me to guide me apart from my own thoughts, my own discernment, my own resolve. And you come to the realisations through your determination to understand and to break away the bullshit. So again, I start to, Gav presents something like this from, I'm not going to say who right now, and you start to realise that there's a reason why people end up at these things, because people are trying to understand their reality, they're being intellectually honest, they're having a look at the mechanisms that they're experiencing, and that's the only way to go. So you're bound to arrive at the same junction. So you don't need academia, you don't need 10 years of fucking, PhD and getting patted on the back and all that fucking stuff. Use your own discernment, use your own rational processes, and you will discover what's going on.
Yeah? Still there?
Aye, you hear me?
Aye. Sorry, you cut off for a minute. I don't know whether it was me or not.
You're there.
Everything all right? Can you hear me, Gav? Aye. Thank you.
Aye, I can hear you now again.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you were saying, I mean, I'm not appealing to any authorities here,
No.
Del. I think, we talked about this. I know you haven't read this guy, right? But, people are all ending up at the same place if they just use their common sense, be direct realists, and think actually logically to a conclusion. Then people will come to the same conclusion. The nonsense they've told us is absolutely absurd and nonsensical. Whereas if you use your senses, then there's actually only one place you can arrive at, and it's the same conclusion whether you've been in academia or whether you're just a normal Joe, right? And I think that's part of, again, I'll say again, the reason that I come here, because I want to show that none of us are different. None of us are different, whether you have an academic background or whether you don't. We can still all get to the same reasoning and the same conclusion.
We all have the ability to understand practicality. It's there, it's in the Constitution. And if we're moving away from practicality and into the realms of abstract, it's all right if it's creativity and expression of abstract art or whatever it is you're up to. But don't start trying to assert that as some aspect of our shared objective reality, because if it's removed from practicality, there's a real fucking problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this idea of things being in a kind of equilibrium, I'm just talking about this slide here, but if we think of a golf ball, Dale, and, people have probably seen, footage of when a golf club hits a golf ball, how things get deformed, and how the elasticity of the golf ball getting compacted and then rebounding is what sends the thing off on its journey, and what gives it a motive, force, if you like. Although I'd like to, qualify what I mean by force maybe another time, right? But so it's highly important. Here's another couple of slides, and then I think we're just about finished. And what this guy postulates is that, okay, normally if things are in an equilibrium state, then the focus of the body's essence is focused internally. So the golf ball is quite happy lying on the grass, right? But when an external obstacle comes along, like a golf club, and tries to hit it, then if you like, its energy or its essence is transported to the outside shell of it. And that's when forces start to appear. And when things start to become deformed, when something actually hits it. When something pressures it, and something's got to give because no two bodies can be in the same place at the same time.
Well, we can sum up the whole aspect of force and what we're talking about right now, Gav, so that it's clear for everybody. That for me, force is that impact, that point of some material impression being made on some other matter, and people are defining that there's a transfer or a force there. An impact. All we can observe is effect.
Exactly.
The whole matter and everything that got here came from a prime source or the prime mover or whatever. But right now, as far as we can tell, and because we're a part of it, we can only ever observe and measure effect. So when people are talking about force, like punching a punch bag, I hit it with some force. What do people actually mean by that? Modern, sophistry is trying to invoke some invisible energy, stuff, some thing that transfers from one to another, and that's not what's fucking going on.
Well, I mean, the main thing, when you start to look at it mathematically and physically, is that if you want to then measure a force, let's say you want to tell me how much force that is, right? We're trying to quantify it then. The only way you can do that is to see how much the punch bag moved.
Yeah.
So you're talking then about the movement of a physical body like a punch bag, moving backwards after you punch it. And that movement in real space is the measure of our force. But that's all we're seeing, right? We're only seeing the effect, and we're only allowed to or able to measure the effect of these things.
Yeah.
We don't see the cause of it, right?
No.
We see the effects of them.
Which is why it all comes back to the prime mover, which again is why you can see how they ended up at Big Bang. Because they understand and they know that there has to be a prime mover to everything that we experience right now, whether people want to call it God or the Big Bang or whatever. But we're a part of the effect right now, and that's all that we can interpret as effect. Getting to the ultimate root of what I would consider the force is the big question, the big pursuit.
Yep, and as you say, they have to invoke that through the Big Bang because something all needs to get started somehow.
Exactly.
Your obvious other choice is a creation or a god or theism of some kind. Yeah. And we seem to be get given only those two options, and maybe there is a third, Dale.
Maybe.
Right? So I don't want to just take those two options because I know, generally speaking, when they give me two, then they're both bullshit.
No, that's that's why we come down to the two categories of materialism or idealism, if that's even correct. I don't know if I'm using the right words there, but basically matter, and dead matter was just appearing itself from nowhere, no rhyme or reason to it. Or it was, coming from a source of intent, something intended this to happen. Which is why you end up with that dichotomy of the materialist and the religious people and whatever else, But as Gav says, there might be another option that we've just not fully considered, which is why it's important not to ascribe yourself to a particular dogma or a bias. You need to remain open to the possibilities and let's just investigate and leave no stone unturned on our assumptions and see what's actually what. Question the whole fucking shebang. See where it takes us.
Yep. Maybe I should just tell people who this guy was, shall I? Let me just share my screen, just so that people understand that this is not just... Well, I'm just going to type in here. Can you see my screen again, Dale?
Yep.
I'm just going to type in here, who are the most famous mathematicians, yeah?
Yeah. Again, no appealing to authorities, or there's no real relevance to this apart from why people like this that are held in huge regard are saying these things.
So we passed over quite a few of them, but it's this guy here, Mr. Leonhard Euler, who is taken to be the best mathematician ever, right?
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you Google a few of these things, famous or best mathematician, then you'll basically get to, most best mathematicians. You'll get a list, and Euler's always in the list. He's either the first, the second, or the third in any of the things. So again, as you say, we're not appealing to authority. We just want to show here that there are other people throughout the ages, throughout the hundreds of years, that have been thinking about the same problem, if you like, and coming to the same conclusions, that we're in a plenum, that there is no such thing as a vacuum, that there must be some substance that pervades everything, and that there are mechanical aspects to that substance.
Yeah.
And it's those mechanical aspects that that describe, if you like, the natural phenomena and the effects we see, which people call forces nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's all I'd like to say.
Excellent.
I'll just shut off this screen share again. Right.
Yeah.
And he's not the only example, Dale. I could go on for hours picking out examples of people like that. I mean, it's very obvious in electromagnetism too. If you look at the people like Maxwell, who also believed in an all-pervading ether, and his description of how magnetism is. Yeah. People have played with magnets before. If you take two magnets and you try and push them together, two north poles, then you'll feel how this stuff doesn't want to. It kind of escapes you.
Yeah.
And what all these guys postulated was that within this space of the geometric arrangement of your circuit or whatever it is, then there is a space in there filled with a medium that is basically providing this tension and this pressure between the things.
Yeah.
So it's not as if this is all just hairy-fairy. This is if you like, what natural philosophy has been trying to uncover for the last thousands of years or however long we've been here. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's all highly interesting topics, and when I see all these knob jockeys, that draw a wee equation on their board saying, "Oh, you silly people, it's gravitational constant," then they actually don't know much, right? They've never really studied the history of the subject or the philosophy behind it, and they don't really understand what these equations mean. They're just spouting them with some kind of force and how should I say, rhetoric to persuade people. Right. And it's actually pretty pathetic.
Well, they say it with gusto and authority or assumed authority, but that's just through their own fucking delusion of grandeur that they've convinced themselves that they have a grasp on these things, and that's why they present it with that kind of authority. But just like anybody else that's totally convinced of bullshit that they believe in, they will say it with authority,
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So it's hugely interesting for me, Gav, as I've said before. There's been so many cases of that. Again, I've never walked the walk of academia, but I find it interesting that, things have been pinpointed in regards to my processes and how I've reasoned, where somebody will come along and they'll say whether it's a Socratic method or, Euler or whatever else, and you start to realise, well, of course, if you're asking the questions intently and keeping focus on it and pushing with it, you're going to end up at the same junctions as these people did. Again, it's not about being a superior intellect or in a competition sense. It's just about being a discerning human being, and for me, asking the relevant and important questions of your actual existence rather than just taking it all for granted and living in pure ignorance.
Well, as we've said many a time, Dale, it's actually going back to the start and looking at the first principles. There's no point about us arguing things down the road. We have to all look at exactly where these things come from. Right. I think in your intro, you were also talking about how we need a natural language before we can put words on top. Yeah? Like, the example of a lighter, which is a perfect example. We don't need words to be able to convey and demonstrate those things. We both know exactly what is meant without uttering one syllable. And the same way, I don't need to write a mathematical equation to know what water is level. Exactly. Right? I just need to point at it or pick it up and move it one place and make gesticulating gestures, and everybody knows what is meant, right?
Exactly.
So, and these things are really important, that if we look back at the beginnings of these things, that's where we're going to find where we went wrong, where the deception happened, why we're being tricked into believing things. So,
misdirected. So, aye, that's it. It's the base language. As I say, you can see it everywhere in reality. You don't need a spoken word to convey some practical aspect of our shared reality. And I've said this before. It's fair enough when there's a particular avenue of expertise in regards to some complexity of mechanism, like mechanics, for talking sake, of the automotive industry. The normal Joe Blogs, maybe Disney fully understand it, but they have a practical mind where through time, I can demonstrate the mechanisms of each component and its relation to each other, and any human being would grasp it and understand it, because it comes down to simplicity, so
Well, we've talked about this, Dale, that we're going to take the motor car,
yeah,
as probably the best example we have of trying to explain natural phenomena, because within a motor car we can talk about everything, right? Forces, quantity of motion, manifolds, pressure, gas, electric motors, accent. All these things of the modern physics are in the car. So, I think we agreed that that's probably the best analogy. And if we break that down, then people will understand all these concepts easy.
Sorry, Gav.
No, any bother. Wee man comes first.
Aye. Rattling on about computer games. I mean, we spoke about this the other day as well. Speaking to Marty about this, should we just be the narcissist? Fuck it, I just want to do what I want to do for each moment in time and no contemplate my own existence. Maybe that's my problem, fuck it, I want to play a computer game for 2 hours. No, I want to scratch my balls and pick my ass and sniff it. I mean...
I think we all need that time off, right? If you say it's a kind of narcissistic or an egoistic kind of,
well, we're all born.
Creation, you get to be creative, daydream.
We're all born narcissists. There's no child that's no born narcissistic in its ways, It's all me, demand, tantrum, I mean...
At least at a certain age, that's very true.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it changes with age, personally, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. But we spoke about this, the influence of change through a society and a construct, and that being influenced, and but then we have to look and say, well, what's the dominant factor, and should that be imposed upon the natural flow? I mean, these are all things that we have to be considering. It's fair enough that the narcissistic tendencies, they're going to learn natural boundaries, like don't come up and shove things in my face, or I'm going to nip at you. The same as any animal. One pup born into a litter will bite another one too hard. It'll react. The other one then registers it and says, okay, I know that I can't go too far. So there is these kind of natural formulations of a structure, if you like, but we have to look at least. Aye, but what we have is a more advanced imposition to that natural flow, where there's mechanisms and aspects in there that I think infringe on a natural flow that take it too far, to the point of trauma and causing a schism, But we can get to all that,
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that. It's a kind of externalization of what happens internally. As you say, a lot of the things that happen internally, they seem to have externalized, and then we attach ourselves to these things that are kind of part of us, and that's why we feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm maybe not explaining that very well, but we'll maybe get into that topic deeper.
We'll save that for a proper presentation, methinks,
Yeah. And there's just one thing I'd like to say about force, and let me just share my screen there, because I always find this hugely important that people understand the difference, and you've heard this before, but between proper quantities and quantities that are, improper. Yeah. And I just want to make sure that, so I'm sharing my screen again, am I?
Yep.
Yeah. So we only have certain things that we can call proper, and that is number, duration, lines, surfaces, and volumes, right?
Yeah.
Those are the 5 things with which we can measure everything else. Now, we talked about this, like when you punch a punch bag, if you want to measure that force, you need to say how far has the punch bag traveled, right? So you need to actually know the volume of the punch bag. So that's in here under solids and volumes. You need to understand how much distance it's moved. That's in here with length, yeah? And only if you can then quantify your force by the amount the punch bag moves, then that's your measurement of it. Yeah. So there are things that are real, and which in the old days they called proper quantities, and then there's the things that are improper quantities. And I've said this before. Speed is the best example of it. Speed is something which is not real. Mm-hmm. Speed is a relationship between the distance and the time, but of itself it does not exist.
No.
Right? The only way for you to measure speed is to measure a distance and measure a time. You can't do it any other way, right? And once you define something like that and you give it its proper definition in terms of distance and time, then I can tell you what's twice the speed, I can tell you what's half the speed, and I can find ratios between them. And that's all that mathematics does. Mathematics and physics is all about finding these ratios and defining quantities, if you like. And I really want people to get to grips with that, because when we then talk about force, it's basically the same thing. So here's a definition of Newtonian forces. Newton defined forces in two different ways. He says it's either the velocity generated in a given time, or it's a quantity of motion generated in a given time.
Yeah.
And these are actually two different things. The quantity of motion is what we now term nowadays momentum, which is mass times speed. And the other one that came out of this whole debacle in the 1700s was the other equation, a half mv squared. And a half mv squared is what we now call energy. And that's the introduction of those two different types of describing what a force means is what gives us the rocket equation and escape velocities for bullshit spaceballs. Or down here in the real world, it gives us the force with which bodies move and hit each other.
Yeah.
And that's the real world, Dale, right?
That's
the real world where we have bodies and we have a thing called an ether, which we don't really understand. And the other one is just bullshit spaceballs and empty voids, which mean nothing.
Yeah.
So.
And mystical, magical forces.
And mystical, magical stuff. Yeah. But I have to keep hammering that home, because I know it's maybe not something that people hear all the time. They'll jump to using equations, but they won't understand the actual definition of what a force is. It's not a real thing. It's us trying to put a relationship to something that is in motion. Yeah. That's what a force is all about, right?
Yeah.
So, and we say it's certainly not a cause of anything. We don't know what the cause is.
No, well, that's it. The cause for me is what I would define as the force, the prime mover, the ultimate, the baseline of what we experience in reality, the thing that put everything into motion and continues.
What gets it all going. Yep.
Yeah. So, aye, excellent.
Aye. I don't know if you want to, I think open up you wanted to anyway, so I'll just go quiet and listen in and interject.
Right.
If I've got something to say.
So again, you need to email the above email address, people. I'm just going to come to my emails just now and take it from the first. So, where are we? What are we doing here?
I'll be back in a sec, Dylan.
No worries. Oh, Nick, I see you've emailed as well. Nice one, mate. If you hear this, I'll get to that. Kieran, I'd like to chat tonight if you have time in the room. Okay, Kieran. First email is sent. All the ones that we got here. Jonathan Allen, Jacob Veritas, Margaret. Okay. Cool. There's a few there. Right. Wasn't he a force though, David Marks? It was just an effect. It's not that hard, riddle me that. It comes down to simplicity. The complications is coming because of this modern day take on things where it's so jargon and fucking word salad, because they're trying to prop up some proposition of a paradigm, the all-encompassing theory of everything, and trying to explain reality, but they're trying to explain it from within. You're part of it, and you're part of the effect, and these fucking dipshits are trying to tell you how it all came and what the ultimate cause was. Although, if you've heard that before, I think it was Terence McKenna that coined that term. Modern science starts on the premise of give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. Well, the free miracle is how it all got here. What the prime mover actually was. The only thing they can express and try and explain is the effects thereafter. So interactions between solid-bodied matter, and that's what they're describing or trying to describe. To a point where it is real physicality and part of actual reality, and then they just wander away into the realms of abstract fucking nonsensical jobby, you know? So, anyway. What's that beyond belief? That was, what do you call him? Is scientific atheism a frivolous exercise in intellectual contempt? Berlinski, David Berlinski's the man. Schizophrenia, I would say schizophrenia is an absolutely normal reaction to the abnormal construct that we've created. It's this abnormal construct that we've created that's the fucking mental illness. Schizophrenia is just a byproduct. That's just another effect of something that came before, which is the creation of this bullshit structure that we have right now. Same as depression and all these things, normal reactions to abnormal situations. I'm sure somebody else coined that phrase as well before, but well, that's it, Pragmatic. For me, there is, limits to our comprehension. We're part of the effect. None of us were present or part of the prime mover, the initial force, if you like, that put this whole thing into motion. So if you're born into this and part of the effect, you can only ever observe and witness effect. And how are we going to get outside it? It's like being a wee being inside a PC and describing the effects and then making postulations about what's encompassing it. You'll never know until you're removed from it and you're actually outside of the physical construct to be able to understand it further. So it's just desperately clutching at straws to try and have certainty. That's exactly what they're up to. Exactly, Brandon Cook. Let's meet up and do some experiments, whatever you like, game over games. Give me a shout. No, I've never heard of that unknown identity. I'm a slut. Oh, fucking brilliant. I'm a slut.
Hey, Dale.
How's it going, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm alright.
Yeah, good. Yeah, sorry about that. Always takes me a little while to.
Yeah, you need to turn the YouTube video down, mate. You need to see the YouTube thing. Just turn the volume off on it.
I will. Hey, Dale. How's that?
I think so. I think that's us.
Is that better?
Aye, it's just if you've got YouTube on and you're watching it, there's a 30-second delay or something. So if you're trying to listen through that, you're going to get annoyed. You're going to get affected by that. So.
Okay. No, sorry, Dale. It's just taking me a second here.
No worries, mate.
Fuck. There's this app was not loaded because something went wrong.
Sorry, yeah. I can hear you anyway, mate. I can hear you and see you, so.
I'm having, sorry, I just had a bit of technical trouble here, which is no great surprise. Fuck. Man. Oh, here we go. Is that the volume there?
You sorted. You hear me? What's going on?
Can you hear me now, Bill?
Can hear you now, mate.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're not getting feedback, are you?
No, that's us. We're sorted now.
Excellent, excellent. No worries. Yeah, got there in the end. How you been, mate? Right?
Yeah, good man, good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear me now, Bill?
Oh, we're getting it back again. Just turn YouTube off, mate. Just get rid of YouTube altogether. You don't need it open. Ah, you froze. Gone. Well, Kieran, I'm going to need to shut that one down and move on. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, obviously you're welcome to come back again, mate, but I'm going to have to move on and open another one up. Just bear with me for the next request. Just remember, people, when you're coming in here, there's absolutely no requirement for you to have YouTube on. If you're just interested in seeing yourself on the telly, you can wait till later and then you can watch it back and see yourself on the telly. But you don't need YouTube when I send you the link, because you're coming into Google Hangouts and there's going to be a delay between us speaking and what comes on YouTube. So even if you have got YouTube opened, you need to remember to hit the mute button on the video of YouTube that you're watching right now, or it's just going to interfere. Not that I'm saying that's what you were doing, Kieran, you know. But look, Mum, I'm on the TV. Speaking to the guy with the big axe wound in his face. I've made it. Right. Right, so Jonathan, I've watched some of your YouTube videos and find them interesting, and you have mentioned numerous topics that are new to me and I'd like to learn more about them. I admire your knowledge and your articulacy in putting them across. With some of these in mind, can you recommend any books, PDFs on sophism? Just recognise the patterns of sophistry and what it actually is. Books, I'm sure you could type it in. Mathematics, geometry, there's an abundance of them out there. Again, I would point you to guys like Thomas Reid and look at some of that literature, physics, NLP. I mean, the interwebs is your oyster. Again, for me, the majority of my understanding comes through contemplation of my own experiences. Looking at things from all possible angles, questioning my own motives, my own interpretations, constantly analysing any input that's coming in and how I am filtering it. I think that's where people's attentions have to be. Again, you may get some trigger of realisation from some literature or somebody on Tinterwebs saying something to you, but I wouldn't lay your hat there and use that as your method of resolve. You have to question your own being, question your own discernment, your own processing, your own filtration of information, input, output. It's all about you. Linguistics, NLP, sophism, they're just useful words in order to express to somebody else what we're actually discussing. That's about it. I live in Glasgow. I would have liked to have attended your recent meet-up at your house, but unfortunately I was away in England and work at the time. But hopefully I'll be able to come along to the next one. No worries, Jonathan.
Just a comment on that, Dales. You know, the most of the information that we need is already out there. It's just really a matter of what you turn your attention to.
Yeah.
And as you quite rightly point out, you have to do the hard work yourself.
Exactly.
You know, nobody can take it off of you. There's no point in just believing something that somebody's written, or believe in me, or believe in yourself. Right? You have to go out and do the work for yourself to really come to the knowing and the realization of what's going on.
Exactly. And the other aspect is people like to be windswept and interesting, so they'll gauge an overview of something. They'll select some buzzwords and phrases that they think sound intellectual, and just that's enough to satisfy their projections. So people have to be aware of these things as well. Pursue what you really are interested in and where your own being is, you know. No just clutching at things to try and sound like you've got a wider vocabulary so that you sound more intellectual and with more depth, you know.
Well, and I think it really is important that people look at these logical fallacies. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, you know. And there is great material on the internet, short videos explaining what a logical fallacy is, you know, how to recognize false premises or, you know, assumptions that are not immediately, you know, cognizable. Everybody does it sometimes. You know, you do it yourself where you make assumptions to things without even realizing it. And it's knowing yourself that will allow you to see it in others.
Well, that's the whole process for me. It's identifying yourself, being totally brutally honest with yourself at all times. And you will naturally understand the deceptions within you internally, regardless of what anybody else is offering. So we speak about it. There's guys like Steve HV, who you'll see in the chat box here. Click the wee 3 dots next to his name, take you to his channel. Steve HV concentrates quite a lot on the fallacious rhetoric of the globe cult and other aspects of it. So there's different avenues. But again, it always comes back to you. So
I agree. If you recognize how you manipulate others, even in small, trivial things that have no real consequence, then you'll understand how people manipulate you from the outside. Yeah.
Right. Alan. Right, nice one, Alan. I see you've put a number there. I'll get back to that, mate. Jacob. Hi Dale, I work at an airport. I always ask pilots if they have to dip their nose down while flying to account for curvature. 9 out of 10 times they laugh at the idea, and no pilot has told me they have seen the curve, and all agree that the horizon maintains at eye level no matter elevation. That's it, mate. That's just the fact. Nice one for that, Jacob. Veritas. Oh, Dale, maybe pull this link up and let Gav's thoughts on it. Epic Gravity Experiment by who is that? I can recognise that. J Tolan Media. So what I'll do is I'll copy the URL for that. I'll stick it in the chat box, Gav. I'll send you a link to that and you can have a wee watch at it yourself. I'm not going to watch it right now. Obviously, I'm trying to open up for other people. So I've stuck it in the chat box, Veritas Rising, and Gav, I'm going to send it to you right now as well. I'm remembering, since there's a request for you to have a wee view of it.
Yeah, cheers, man. I will.
Right. No rubbish in it all, Veritas Rising. It's just no the format of this evening. That doesn't mean to say I'm neglecting it. So it's been shared there, and we'll have a look at it. Margaret. Hi, Dale and Gavin. I wish I would have known about you and Gavin when I first found out about the level plane only 8 months ago. I really appreciate you two pointing me in the directions where I can find out things for myself. I don't have any education in rhetoric or even any kind of logical thinking, so of course I came off to my family as a complete loon. Attempting to answer questions about why would everybody lie and so on and so forth. I never stuck to the first principles, like how water always behaves and gases need to be contained. Instead, I just kept trying to answer questions about stuff I have no idea about, such as the sun and moon. Well, that's often a method that you'll see people, particularly with some sort of belief system. They have heard these things, the place that's been presented to them as some sort of relevance. And again, they're displaying, you know, aspects of the Dunning-Kruger effect, because if you know how to question them further, you will realise that they have nowhere to go in their own reasoning. They're just hearing these things and repeating them blindly. So glad that you've caught yourself on with that. What a mess I made of it all. I didn't even know what the word sophistry meant until I heard it from you two. Anyway, I have learned a lot from you and your friends that you have in your chat, and one day soon will attempt another go at my family. My YouTube name there is Auntie Meg. Thanks for all the work you do, Meg. Nice one. Thank you very much for that wee email, and glad that, you know, the endeavour's been made here that's been of use to you, you know, so.
Alright, appreciate the kind words too.
Yeah. Just for fun. Gene. Link from Ali B for a giggle. What's this? It's 3 minutes.
Lecture online.
Right, well, since it's only 3 minutes, I'll have a wee quick look at it just to break up here. Wait a minute, what do I need here? What am I showing right now? Nothing. Screen share. Can you see what I'm showing, Gav?
Yes, I can indeed.
Let's try to answer the question, what is gravity? A few hundred years ago, when Newton observed an apple falling from a tree, and he pondered what that really meant, why an apple would do that, and he looked in the skies and he saw...
Because this grew out from the ground and went away up that way through, you know, processes and grew out to that point, and then its natural process was to let go of that once it reached maturity, and it dropped down. It never appeared floating in fucking mid-air. Right?
Yeah,
a push.
And I would,
sorry,
I would think there's a push and pressure and water and light and all of these things would have had something to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. So to negate the whole process of how the fucking tree got up there and the wee apple formed in the first place, and just start from, oh, it's fell, as if in your mind you have to imagine that it's just appearing from nowhere and fucking falling. Nothing appears in mid-air.
Saw the motion of the moon and the motion of the planets, he began to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and he began to realize that gravity is a force between objects. And he was able to formulate an equation now known as the universal equation of gravity, which indicated that the force between objects was simply the product of the masses between the two objects divided by the distance.
There they go. They've just jumped straight to equations and concepts, right, without defining their terms, how they're measuring it, what it has to do with physical quantities, how it got there, as you just said, Dale, you know. Pathetic. Just straight jump into the chalkboard.
Yeah. And that's the best picture of a fucking nature-defying blue testicle that I've seen to date. The clouds look more authentic.
That's better than NASA,
eh? And some constant known as the universal gravitational constant. But when Einstein came along, he challenged that thought. He said, gravity isn't really a force. What he claimed was, when you place an object in space, that space itself would bend. It would warp into the fourth dimension. And anything that comes close to that warp is...
So again, you need to understand what it means by space. What's he talking about with space?
What kind of geometry are we assuming down there? Are we talking physical space, a mathematical space, a visible space? There's so many definitions there.
Simply fall into it. It didn't require any mass. In other words, like...
So really what he's postulating here is another sort of medium, like an ether type scenario.
Well, they try to remove it and they don't want to mention it, but they keep bringing it back in different forms and subtle ways.
Yeah.
Because it's preposterous to think it could work without it, Dale.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, basically Einstein, you know, and Newton got, you know, absolute space and things are supposed to be able to propagate through nothingness. And you've always to think of wee space balls, whether it's electrons and protons or whether it's Jupiter, Mars and Polaris, you know.
And that's
absolute preposterous.
And that's why you see these clowns in the education system trying to portray this bollocks, where they'll put a fucking a big pair of fucking granny elastic knickers over a barrel or a drum and then throw a fucking billiard ball into it and go, look, the warping and bending of space-time. Fucking... Because they know they need something. There has to be some sort of substance present. There's no such thing as nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they took away natural geometry of the physical reality that we live in, Dale, and they went to a mathematical concept of something they call space, right? And we've all attached that, concept and idea to our heads through an education system, or through a schooling system. Again, I hate the word school. Referring to it as education.
Yeah.
So.
Example, if a photon of light were to come by, it would feel that bend in space and it would change direction.
Photons now, we'll just rattle our things, assumptions, and no ever address them. Photon.
Yes, particles with no mass.
Wee tiny balls. These cunts are obsessed with balls.
Light has mass, but simply because it would experience that warp, that bending in space. The larger the object,
like his dicky bow. That's fucking warping and bending around his fucking neck. Somebody should tighten it.
It's too much gravity here at the back of his fucking skull that's eroding the fucking patch on the hair. It's too much bending and warping of the space-time around your cranium there, sir.
The hairy ball theorem got to him.
Bend, and the more readily objects would fall into it. It would appear as if they're being attracted to this big object.
He's been lying in his fucking bed too much, contemplating this gibberish. That's what happened there. Your head warped and bent the fabric of the mattress, right, and wore the fucking patch on your skull. Stop talking shite.
Get out into the real world with real people and start talking.
What is it with these cunts and their wee squiggles and fucking whiteboards and cartoon drawings and all that? I mean, what the fuck's wrong with them?
In essence, they're simply falling into the bend or the warp of space, and the greater the object, the larger the mass of the object, the bigger the bend of space, and the greater the force, or at least the apparent force, would be acting on the object. Objects would still simply be falling into that bend. This is why the Earth revolves around the Sun.
No, it doesn't.
The Sun causes a bend in space.
You know what I mean? Again, we're back to the elasticated granny knickers and dropping billiard balls and then rolling them in and trying to pass that off as some sort of physicality, misrepresenting. They're just talk utter jobbies, these people. I can't be bothered listening to them.
No, it's funny though. It's a good find, Ali. It shows, it highlights all of this, right the way to what we've been talking about. Because remember, compare that to what we've just talked. The fluid of an etheric substance that has to be there because there is no such thing as a void.
Exactly.
And yet on the right hand side, they're showing us flowing things, right? You can see the curve and the flow in there, and they're saying that this warping is the thing that causes forces. But no. That's just all geometrical concepts, and we're missing the fact that this world is a world of substance still, and not concepts.
Exactly.
The Earth, if it was standing still, would simply be falling into the bend, but because it has a velocity of about 30 kilometers per second, it stays in orbit, simply like a marble rolling around the hole I got without falling in.
Aye, but if you fucking roll a marble into your granny knickers, it's going to lose momentum and fucking stop.
Yeah.
The Earth itself causes a warp in space as well, and the Moon revolves around the Earth because it is affected by that warp in space.
Dale, you must be warping the space around you as well.
That's it.
There must be stuff shrinking as it gets closer to your event horizon.
Right. And then disappearing into that axon below my lips. That's the black hole of my material being.
Straight into your bum chin. Disappear out your own arsehole.
There's dark matter and counter space and every fucking thing present within it.
Even our bodies cause a warp in space. Our bodies are very small, and the warp in space is barely noticeable, but it is there, and with very, very fine instruments, you should be able to measure the change in an object nearby because of the attraction.
We need some optical instruments to find this curve.
Gravity.
Let's look in the sky.
A man 200 years ago hung a wee rope off a mountain, and the rope and the ball was attracted to the mountain, and then another man in a shed with two balls and all that.
A warp in space around your body.
When I sit on the couch, my kids fall inwards because I've warped and bent the material and the fabric of my couch. Right? That's about it, sonny boy.
but But Dale, that's what I mean about, you know, what I said earlier about, you know, what happens to us, what we experience, exactly that. You know, things will fall in towards you because you're of a heavier weight than your kids. They'll try and externalize that whole concept to something that is, you know, outside of reality.
Aye, but that's in a medium, like, you know, I'm using a mattress or a couch or something, but if they just stand next to me, they're no falling inwards towards me.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. They've taken that concept, which we know to be true, i.e. that they'll come towards you in the couch, and they've tried to externalise this to a worldview, a cosmological worldview that we're supposed to believe happens all the time.
There's invisible granny there's invisible lycra granny pants surrounding us. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's amazing how we get conned. So it is.
And yes, even small objects as small as a ladybug do affect space, to such a minute extent that it cannot really be measured.
Oh, fucking how fucking appropriate.
Causes small bending in space.
It's happening, but I can't detect it or show you in any way, shape or form. Just trust me, look at my drawings.
And if we could measure small enough objects, we could see them falling into that bend. Of course, that would not be possible because it would be very difficult to measure.
So what the fuck are you talking about, dipshit?
Very difficult to measure, is that what I heard?
Aye. It's basically negating it, saying you can't. But it's real. Because I drew a squiggly line. I think he must have taught conspiracy cats.
Right, because I'm a mathematician and I can play with abstract algebra.
Yeah.
A bit of topology and some differential geometry and yippee! I can draw little balls.
But there's no limit as to what objects can do to space, no matter how small they are.
There's no limit.
All objects in the universe bend space, and it's that bending of space that creates the sensation of the force of gravity.
Shut
and
up.
That is gravity, according to Einstein.
Oh, there you go. What a buffoon.
But see how that ties into, you know, basically what we were saying earlier on. You know, Einstein changed the meaning or abolished the ether. Right, and says space-time is what, you know, makes us think forces are real, or that's how we sense forces. But again, forces are just effects or things we can measure where real objects move.
Yeah.
And if we don't differentiate between apparent objects, visible objects, then they're just telling us that all that shite is real outside. Or if we can't see down inside enough, they'll tell us that there's wee space balls in there. It really is the same story in both scales. Yeah.
They're taking physicality and trying to extrapolate it into a metaphysical realm of fucking abstract jobby and gobbledygook.
Yeah. And I'm sure that wee man believes every word he's saying. He's absolutely sincere, I would think, Dale, right?
Yeah.
There's, you know, he's just completely lost in that wee world.
Right. Next.
All right, let's have some visitors. That was good, though. I quite enjoyed that intermission.
Next, we've got Ali. He's asking to come in. So. Oh no, shit, I've sent you the wrong thing, Ali. Hang on. Sent you that YouTube link. I need to copy that again. Ignore that first one. It's that one there. So. Aye. Fucking lot of nonsense.
Oh, aye. Far too much weight given to, you know, the creator, you know, must have used mathematics as a language, Dale.
Yeah.
And people actually believe both of those abstract language, you know, abstract concepts like mathematics is an abstract concept in itself.
Yeah. And
then, you know, a metaphysical God as well. And we're supposed to believe that that's the way he's communicating to physical beings in a direct reality.
Yeah.
It's a preposterous thought, you know.
Mathematics is reality. I think that was the phrase for that fucking gimp that Red's retarded.
I haven't been paying any attention to the gimp squad.
No, I just remember it from the time when I went on to tell them they were all wankers.
All right, yeah. Well, it was an enjoyable night. I still in them days had delusions and was naive enough to think that, you know, somebody actually might be sincere. But
I knew it. I fucking
No,
knew
online. You hardly find any online.
it. No, I knew it. Yeah, says that to you. That was my whole intention, was just to go in and say, fuck you.
I know. Yeah. Then you were right to do it.
Right. Well, I think that's it, Paul Etchells. These people listen too much to these clowns just because they buy into it and they understand the abstraction. You know, they think because they can grasp some abstract concept or theory that because they can understand it, that somehow verifies its validity. You know, that's just not how it works. I can visualize and grasp the concept of, you know, unicorns in the fifth dimension. You know, and picture it and image it, but that doesn't mean to say it's a fucking fact. That's the difference.
Well, exactly. And again, I'd like to point out that, you know, engineerable physics is something different from mathematical physics, or what we call theoretical physics. So, you know, it's not the former that we're slagging here. Yeah?
No.
It's the latter, the bullshit.
Oh, we said it before, you know, utilising mathematics as a descriptor for practicality is very useful to us. You know,
Absolutely.
It's the same in music. You know, you have musical theory in order for musicians to speak to each other in a language, but that doesn't negate the primary, which is the instrument and the musicality. That comes first and foremost. So as long as you're
coming through 1, 2.
As long as your descriptors match the practicality.
Right, we can hear you, Alec.
Oh.
All right. So.
All right, mate.
Aye, the hangout's looking a bit weird.
Is it?
Aye.
What's up?
Oh, well, I don't know. I've just got your picture up and Gavin's picture up, and I've got a grey circle in the middle, and it's not moving when you were talking. That's why I was wondering. Yeah.
Don't come in and slag my hangout, Ali, for fuck's sake. No, I mean, what's the matter? It's always something to complain about.
I wanted to get on the telly, Dale.
I thought that. Well, there's a big circle in your way. Move your seat out a bit and get away from the fucking circle then. Am I there? Can you see my pretty face now?
No. No, it's all right. It's all right. No worries. That was quite funny, that video there.
Aye.
Because you know how they seem to forget that's actually that bending stuff is like, it's like 3-dimensional. It should be around it all, right? Shouldn't it?
They shot in a planar form all the time, like
exactly. And that's how they can get away with that little ball round. Linear. You know, the example they've given me that. Yeah. That's how they can get away with sort of convincing people. But you've got to think, up in space, or what they call space, or that medium that's up there or whatever.
Well, use the medium as water, Ali. That portrays it better, because, you know, if you put an object in there, it's displacing it all around the full object. You know, so
there you go. Yeah. That's what I try to imagine it as, like as the alleged atmosphere, but it's bendy instead. It's up, right? And that's a good one actually. And
we'll call that plenum.
Aye, that was quite a good word. That plenum. That was quite a good word actually. Mm-hmm. But the way that's the way they kind of get it. But it's a bit funny because how can something, apparently nothing weighs anything up there, so I don't understand how they. It's
funny how they progress with that, because I've said that before. I remember they used to depict the universe with their spaceballs to me in a kind of linear fashion, where it was planar, where you had the sun at the centre and everything going around, and even made a mechanical device. I remember seeing it as a kid, machine that moved in a kind of linear, planar fashion. The spaceballs going around each other circular. And then it's obviously progressed and adapted into this heliocentric fucking, you know, it's all moving and spinning round and going all different directions, you know? But
that model...
That'll depend on your frame. I was just going to say, that'll depend on your frame of reference, Dale, your perspective, your view from which vantage point, yeah? Which eye and which situation will give you the ecliptic plane, right? Which they can then represent on paper, or are we going through an absolute space chasing the sun? You know, you name it. Give us your concept. We'll find a reference frame to show you a good image.
Well, that was the thing. I only found out, and it was just before Flat Earth. I only found out that you know that video, that heliocentric model video that shows the sun and us corkscrewing.
Yeah.
Right. That was the first ever time I actually thought of it, because I knew all about space. I liked space and the stars and all that kind of stuff when I was younger, and I was fascinated. But the thing was, I was like, wait a minute, how come I never knew? Because if I'd got told that as a kid, I would have been shitting bricks, man.
Aye.
I was already shitting bricks, wondering what the hell would happen if we stopped, if the Earth stopped spinning. I can remember that as a child. I'm just wondering what I would have thought. That I can't believe that it took me so many years actually to see a visual picture of what we're actually meant to do.
I was trying to trace that, Ali, because they always portrayed it the other way to me, as I say, and I can't remember when that was introduced and when it became that, and they depicted it as that image. I don't know if it's just an advancement to, extrapolate and add on to the bullshit. They had to show it like that. But
so with some new mathematics comes some new projection,
exactly.
Some new vantage point, some new image.
Yeah.
Well, even if you look at that, that black hole, that thing, right? Go and look at the original photograph. You're going to piss yourself laughing, man. It's like 4 pixels, 4 squares in the middle of it. That's basically what it is. There's no definition, and it turns into this beautiful picture. That was just actually a twitch on a bit of graph, because it was a radio signal. You know what I mean? And they had thousands of models, meaning that they had thousands of what if this event happened. If this event happened, this is what we would hear. And they had thousands of them, because it was like betting on a horse, a 1,000 horse race, and every horse will win, kind of thing. You can't lose.
Probability is a good thing, eh?
Well, that's exactly.
Chance would be a fine thing. That's I say.
Well, that was right, and the thing that fascinates me is that people on the other side of this discussion, when you point it out to them, they just try to make up loads of excuses. Like, oh, he meant that, and I can't understand how they actually believe. Actually, forget about the shape of the Earth, right? Let's just talk about the science and space and the Big Bang stuff. I don't know how these people are buying into that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like something started out of nothing. No. And that's impossible, according to their laws, unless there was new physics then. No. And then they made up that it's not actually nothing, it's actually a bub. And even the adjectives that they use, this bubbling boil, even when they say this bubbling boil and massive particles or whatever, or soup they called it, right? That's how that Lawrence Krauss, and he uses them emotive words, to describe and using basically that neuro-linguistic program you were talking about, Dale. And your first question is, wait a minute. If there was nothing, what's a particle? Isn't a particle something? But people get that much drawn into the description and the story. It's like little kids.
Aye. As long as there's an image, Ali, then that's it. People attached to it. So it's wee tiny space balls. Do you know what I mean? And that's the image that's been depicted to them, and they've invested in it.
Well, there's a great technique in neuro-linguistic programming. Is that if you want to ingratiate yourself, I'll just say it anyway. It doesn't matter. Because most people probably know that. If you want to ingratiate yourself into someone's company really quick, like Darren Brown kind of quick, what you do is you try to find their favourite subject. See that subject that they love talking about, and you just keep asking, just ask questions, look interested. They'll love you. Who's not going to love a person that sits and listens to them talking about themselves?
That's it.
You know what I mean? And there you're in. It's as simple as that.
It's basics as you go to get the guard down of people if you're intending to get involved with them, and you have to dismantle their guard. So appealing to them on some commonality that they've got an interest in is a basic attribute, a basic trick of hoodwinking people.
Exactly, the emotion you can tell it by the emotion,
Mm.
and that's how like the government or the powers that be or whatever control us and get us to do things normal human beings wouldn't normally do, is through emotion, either fear or attachment.
Aye,
That
they're indulging our natural constitutions. You see, that's why sex is utilised and used in advertising and stuff like that. So they appeal to the natural aspects of you, to get you on board. Well, they subtly or subliminally offer you the product, But
yeah.
increasingly so, it's just become more and more in your face. It's not so much sleight of hand or subtle. It's just bare. There you go. There's a pair of tits, and as Bill Hicks says, that'll be the future. You'll just have some woman sitting in a chair in the buff with her legs spread, saying, "Eat this gum." You know what I mean?
You get that on Facebook, Dale. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Well, I'm not even on Facebook. I've had I keep getting my accounts closed down, kind of stuff. So I don't even bother with it. It's pointless.
Mm-hmm.
I've got enough people. I'm happy with the people that are surveying me at the moment. So to add another one, I've got enough people, and that's all they do. There's a video there. It's called Go Figure, Seeing the World Through Maths.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you were talking about, or it was Gav talked about, that guy assigning, mechanicalism or whatever to the universe, and then bodies, seeing a body as a force. It's like kind of desensitizing yourself, so you don't value you see yourself as like a kind of an object, and then you'll see another person just like an object. So it's just an object. So if he gets killed, or it doesn't really matter as long as something bigger's getting done out of it.
Yeah.
I had a strange conversation with my daughter today about morals, Gav, as well. Very strange, man. I asked her a question, though. I kind of, very strange answer. I won't talk about it anyway.
Well, don't titillate us with it. Don't bring it up if you're not going to fucking tell us all. You just try to tease us or what?
It was stupid. It was one of the ones, Dale. You start saying something, you think, I shouldn't have said it. Well, all right, I'll say this, right? And I hope people are not shocked. But this kind of goes down to like the indoctrination process or whatever. So I said to my daughter, asked her that question about the. It was a change on the two trains going to crash together, and you've got the lever, you can make the choice, and there's maybe 200 people on one train and 2 people on the other. Which one do you crash? Well, I used it in regards to you're in control of a drone, right? And there's 2 terrorists in a building, and you've got to fly that drone. Now when that drone explodes, there's going to be collateral damage around the area. There's going to be children, school children and stuff like that. And I said, would you do it? And she said, right, I explained, a terrorist, and they might have, killed maybe 100,000 people or whatever. And she said, yeah. So I decided to push it further. So I said, okay. I says, what about if, well, she did say that, if she didn't want to do it, she wouldn't do it. But so I added one of her friends in there, and she justified it logically. Yeah, well, do you know, if it's saving her? I said, okay, then fair enough. I said, what if it was me that was in there? Same answer. I was like, God, man, what are you doing to me? I pissed myself laughing. But I said to her, I says, look, I asked her, I says, I understand exactly why you think that. And I mean, but I said, here's my question for you. Have you ever wondered why you think that? And because I went into the God aspect, thou shalt not kill, because my answer to that question is I wouldn't either fly the drone or I wouldn't pull the lever, because either way,
it's none of your business.
Murder.
Aye. Again, it comes
murder.
down to the aspects of us subjecting each other to your own morals or ideals or principles or whatever. Trying to impose that on each other. Again, for me, that's the part of the fundamental problems of why humans feel that necessity to impose themselves on each other. It's like, at the end of the day, I can only mind my business and you can only mind your business.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? It's when we create a society and we create these confines and these constructs, then, you know, that's when you get situations like that. Oh, well, we're the military, so therefore we have to blow them up and have collateral damage in order to save this many and blah, blah. Never at the addressing of the first principle again. Well, what the fuck are you doing trying to formulate a society in the first place, you dicks? Where are you getting that? You know? Well, that can never be the problem, no, because we must live like this. Anyway.
Yep. But that's the kind of, I sent another video as well, but I thought after that video that I sent you, I thought you'd used to have a good laugh at that anyway. And I was laughing like fuck, it was great just taking the piss out of it. I thought that was a good one. I sent you another one though, but maybe no play that. It's only a 5-minute one, but it gives a insight, you know, how by the age that you're 8-year-old, you know, that's child psychology. By the time you're 8-year-old, you've been kind of programmed, inverted, you know, or whatever, quotation marks or whatever you call them. You've been programmed. Actually fascinating.
That's aspects of the trivium. Is it Dorothy Sayers, the book I go, she talks a lot about that, about when to introduce certain things, and if you introduce things prematurely, it can have an adverse effect. I think we spoke about this before as well, Gav, like starting to introduce kind of more complex mathematics shouldn't really be done to around about the age of 11. You know, so there's certain kind of steps in development where certain things should be introduced because they've got the capacity to grasp them properly. And if you do it too soon or too early or force it, it can have an adverse effect on them. So there's some good literature, you know, I think it's Dorothy Sayers, if I'm talking about that correctly. I think that's her name. She can outline some of that. But other teachings for the trivium and other people have postulated a similar kind of structure.
Right. No, I mean, there seems to be kind of, as far as I understood it, cycles of about 7 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, 7 years, and then puberty comes at about 14, and then 21, you're kind of finished, you know?
Yeah.
Which is why, you know, there are these restrictions and why, you know, 21 is supposed to be, you know, fully developed, if you know what I mean. So
I think I disagree with that finished thing. I don't think we're ever finished, you know, as a bit, I know what you mean, you know, physiologically, you know, but even at that, as a man, I still was physically, you know, adapting and changing and never really setting until I was about 28, around about 30, you know. So, I mean, I think it's horses for courses, you know, everybody's different. But
I mean, it's a change is all there is, but, you know, there does seem to be certain patterns, maybe, let's call it that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely, that's why Gavin's right, and it's a funny thing as well. There's actually, in astrology, there's planets that do 7-day cycles and all this. Seven's quite a number because it's right enough that in that child's, I think it's 7 or 8, you know, in and around that area, from 0 to 7 or 8. That's when you can actually program and, you know, like hijack the brain, and you can stop there because after that it's kind of it's a natural consequence. That child is already copying, you know, all they do is copy what they see around you, then whatever happens around them. And by the time they're 7 or 8, I think it is. But it's right enough about the 7, the 14 and the 21. It's like an average. They hedge their bets, you know, they only need maybe a certain percentage of that kind of control over people for it to work. So they actually they work to the odds kind of thing. What Gavin was saying, you know, it's like
I think regardless of any of that, if you give a child just the necessity, security, warmth, nourishment, you know, these are the basic principles. They've all grow naturally and find themselves, regardless of what ideas or concepts come their way or pushed to them. If they have that base foundation, then they'll resolve it, you know, at some point in their life. It's only when they don't have that proper foundation that they're just chasing their tail and going round in circles, and they may do that for the majority of their life until they fucking die. You know, as I've seen and witnessed before, you know, I've sat with elders, you know, grandparents, and been absolutely mystified at the absolute crap that they've spewed at me. You know, like fucking wow, you know, all that bullshit about respect your elders and stuff. Well, nah, it's always unearned. These things are never a given. So, you know, I think there's loads of factors, but for me, the base core of nourishment for a child is just that security, warmth, and always being cautious that you're not imposing any constructs or ideas onto them that are going to influence or affect them. You know, let them formulate their own understanding, because they have that. What can I really offer them? Like any other plant, water it, make sure it's in the right environment that it needs to fucking grow and get its roots down. You know, if I start trying to bind it with rope and fucking cut bits off it and all that, it's going to deform and grow into something that it was never naturally going to form into. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just the way I see it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, it's trying to keep an ever-growing enclosure, you know, and some kind of security and safety for them. But, you know, you can't do that, you know, and then all you can do is hope that you're within a distance if they need your assistance, you know.
Well, that's
and I don't mean distance just physically, you know, I also mean in terms of advice or anything else. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, mentally as well, you know.
Yeah.
Aye, love and nurture is pretty much all you can give them, you know.
Well, I've basically told them, you know, respect is earned, but you know, nobody's allowed to tell you what to do, you know. But you know, and if someone does be disrespectful to you, I'll always support you as long as you've been respectful, or whatever. Because I don't care regarding that. That's all I care. That you've got manners, that you respect yourself, you love yourself as well. Always tell them that, and keep off the conspiracy theories. My daughter schools me on theology. She knows more religions than I do. She kind of studies it, you know, like she's 15, and we have some fascinating chats towards, you know, about old history, what she's been told, and it matches up what she's into all that symbolism, and stuff like that, you know, understanding different cultures, Hinduism, Sikhism, and all that kind of stuff. No, but she's basically been allowed to think for herself, and the boy as well, my stepson. I say the same. I've been saying the same thing, you know, the same to him, as best I can. But I don't impose my will.
No, I want to talk about this in more depth as a described kind of hangout. You know, again back to will and intent, and you know, ideas and concepts, the influences they may have. You know, it's pretty layered and complex. You know.
Yeah.
So it could be a discussion that could go on for quite a while, but
I will forget that. I'll drop it anyway, Dale. It was just to come in and say my wee piece. It was just your startup. I just tuned in there, and you're like, psychology, and you started talking about Darren Brown, and you were going, and that's the kind of stuff that kind of was going.
Well, this is the whole.
That video was good.
The whole point is the mind, mate. Your intent, your will, your direction. That's what's driving every fucking thing. You know, so
and our sight, our senses, innit?
Exactly. So, cheers for coming on, mate. Cheers for the wee
video. No problems, right? I'll say good night.
Nice one.
Right, good night to you. Good night, Gav.
Cheers, Alec.
Cheers, Alec.
Yep, cheers.
Just need to stop sharing this. I'm just going to check and see what's come through here, Gav.
No bother. I'll drop off because you'll need to send me another link anyway.
Right, well, I don't know if anybody else...
if you're doing it.
There might be one there. Hang on, I need to read this first. John Daniels. I've seen a lot of to and fro between flat earthers and globe earthers. As a child, obviously the globe was indoctrinated upon me. About 8 years ago, I discovered that the earth was flat and believed this literally until a few months ago. A bit of a backstory. I enjoy wild camping. I'm very much a nature person. I constantly gaze upon our beautiful and natural world, and generally feel humbled by the grandness of it all. I feel so passionate about nature, but for all my trade, business is making fast cars that produce lots of emissions, etc. A year ago, while off in the wilds of Northumbria, I witnessed several phenomena that caused me to question what I relatively recently started to believe. So given this constructive confusion, I am more than willing to do more unbiased physical research, and have been ever since. I think it would be good to investigate our surroundings more, but with open and unbiased eyes. Kindest regards, JD. Game over games. So that's it. We have to investigate, or else we're not being objective. Again, that comes back to discernment and understanding your own processes, and you know, identifying where people have a bias, something that they may have bought into at a previous time that's now influencing their approach to observing and inquiring about natural phenomena or whatever it may be. people have to go internally and identify these aspects of themselves and what's influencing them, so that you can get an objective view, a different perspective, a different perception on, or a different way of looking at whatever it is you're looking at. So I totally agree with you, mate. Good on you for maintaining that. Hi there, my name is Ash. I live close to London, Southern Ferry. I've pretty much watched all of your vids and I always look forward to your live shows on Saturday. Finally plucked up the courage to email you. I would like to join your hangout and have a wee chat. I've worked in aviation for over 16 years and have no issue bringing up the topic of flat earth to fellow aviation colleagues and clients. Although I'm shocked that the majority still don't get it. Anyway, it would be great to say hi and establish a connection with a like-minded people. Send me a link and I will come say hi. Cheers, Ash. Okay. Sending it right now. Sent. So for anybody else, you can still email me, but this is probably going to be the last guest that I have on this evening. I'll be back to normal next week. I was feeling like shit yesterday and just never had the attention or the focus to be able to fire up live. So if you had expectations, that's your fault. This is no the BBC where you're paying me a fee, where you've got the right to have an expectation.
Yeah, I want my Dell service up and running 24/7. Free of charge. Just like that, electricity.
If the gifts of Ferraris and new motorbikes start arriving, then I might reconsider. Until then, go and get fucked.
Don't do it, people. Don't do it, people. It'll be on them bikes racing around Scotland. Right. Don't believe them.
Don't listen to him. Get him sent. I'm not a materialistic person, but by fuck, I love the thrill of a good motor.
So we've got a guest coming, have we? Right. Do I need to go to another hangout? Or?
No, we'll just maintain this one. I can pretty much safe that Ali's not going to pass it on to any porn bombers.
Oh, I don't know about that, man.
Right. Exactly beyond belief. Please send all customer complaints to Fight the Flat Earth.
That would be good.
Hi Del, hi Gav.
Ash, how you doing?
How you doing, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for replying to my link there. Much appreciated. Yeah, just thought I'd come and say hi. Been watching you guys for quite a long time now. Just been sat there in the background, just watching. Just finally plucked up the courage to come and say hi, really. And I appreciate all of the work that you've done, both of you, everyone. It's just thought I'd come and say hi.
Nice one, mate. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no worries.
So you were saying you've got a background in aviation. If you don't mind, are you going to?
Yeah.
You don't mind speaking about it? I'm also showing your face as well. You've not got any problems with any of that, have you? You're all right.
No, crack on, mate. I couldn't give a rat's ass.
Good.
No, I mean, I've kind of, through my youth, I've aspired to sort of make a success of my life and be a professional, but you know, I guess it's come crashing down on me over the last few years, just the realization of, you know, what's more important, you know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like it's literally flipped my world upside down. Oh, thanks, babe.
It's difficult to function in a lie, isn't it? And live life in real life.
No, it's great. I was watching one of your vids the other day, Gav. I sometimes go on Dell's liked videos, and I saw your video sort of going through the word zero.
Yeah.
And like the languages that are used. I found that really fascinating, actually. It's really.
It's not always mine. I'm just collating it from sources I think are good. So you know, I don't want to take credit for everything.
I think that the fact that you put that on like Google Drive for people to download, I think that's really good. You've got kind of information out there. I bought some domain names. If you're interested, you can have them for no charge and all that stuff. But I bought bendywater.com. I was inspired by you guys actually. If you want it, you can have it. If you want to put some like files up online for people to download or whatever, and you're more than welcome to it.
Thanks, sir. Excellent.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I was thinking of something like these Donald Trump "Make America Great" hat again. Yeah. I was thinking of something like "Make the Globe Go Away" hats or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But every day of my life, talking to people, especially colleagues and clients, it's I'm the flat earther, the crazy guy. But I'm not crazy, am I? It's just. It's just running through the logic of it, the whole water being contained, level. When I first came across this, I think it was like 2015. Looking at, I was just before Flat Earth came up, I was relentlessly searching for conspiracies and 9/11. I was just always searching because I've always felt like throughout my life something's not right. I don't know what it is. I'm not religious, but I definitely feel there is a God. Do you know what I mean? Like. I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form. Like my partner's just heavily Christian, and I kind of get the morals of it and stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah. I think that was the same for us all, mate. You're searching for the encompasser. Like you're trying to pinpoint. Something's off, and you're getting so far. A lot of these conspiracies are taking you into a cul-de-sac. There's never any proper resolve, and then you stumble upon your own discernment, understanding the foundations. It's like a breakthrough moment. Right, now a lot of it makes sense. A lot of it's directed at shifting my attention away from questioning the fundamentals of my actual reality, because that's where you find real power and real knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it is a good point you make about, everybody has thoughts about what creation is, and then you have these other aspects of life like morality and judgment and good and bad and all that kind of stuff, where we have to be very careful what we're doing, right? Because that's a very subjective thing again, but the creation part is more for me the natural physical world, so that's a kind of objective thing to be able to talk about creation, but the other stuff can be very dangerous, as we see through religious wars and whatnot.
Problematic even just to have open discussions with each other when people are invested in these types of things. Whereas this, as you say, Gav, it's subjective. It's something that's impersonal that we can't really offend each other by, because it's not a subjective interpretation. It just is what it is. So it's totally different.
That's why the focus has to be, and always has been, Dale, here, right? That we want to talk about objective facts.
Yeah. So. Exactly. Yeah. So what?
Actually, sorry.
No, on you go.
I was just going to be nosy as well and ask, tell us more, Ashley, about yourself and how you came to this. And
so I left school when I was 15. Used to do paper rounds and always wanted to sort of earn money and whatnot. And luckily, I used to deliver a paper to a guy that ran an aviation company, and he gave me a job during the summer. Doing a bit of filing and that. Ever since then, I've been all around the world dealing with the big airlines and Department of National Defence in Canada, and working with engineers on airlines and managing aircraft parts, all that kind of stuff.
Are you a pilot as well?
No, I'm more of a sort of a software guy, more about process and like supply chain management, that kind of thing.
SCM, yeah, sure.
I've got a couple of kids. I used to live out in North America for 5 years. Moved them back to the UK not so long ago, and just sort of re-establishing myself now. I'm sort of at the crossroads. I really don't know what to do. I'm I really want to go off grid, but it's just the way of the age. It's almost impossible to go off grid. I've kind of, thanks to you guys, I've kind of like wound my ego in a little bit, because before, just a bit of a hothead, just listening to you guys and it's just, I don't know, it's good. And I appreciate everything you guys have done. It's really helped me. I've heard this many times of other people dialing into you and saying the same kind of thing, that you guys have really opened my eyes just to be a bit more reasonable with my own self, really, if that makes any sense. Right.
Yeah, it does. I'm glad to hear that you've stood perpendicular to a ball, you've been on top, on the ball, even while you're orientationless through an absolute void.
Yeah.
Well done to survive that, man.
I work in an office with a load of globe gobblers and this kind of stuff, and every once at a time, I print off a couple of pictures of fish monkeys and stuff and pin them up on the wall. Just to hammer them in. I know it's probably not a good way to do it, and it's probably putting them off. But some of these guys are so stuck in, right? They won't even look at it. They like you say, they just go to an authority. They just go to a to a group. They just think it's all been done. They've got good qualifications and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's it. That's what they've learned. That's the habits they've picked up. That's their go-to. Such and such said so therefore that will do me. I trust such and such, so that's the truth. That's the gospel.
And it's fascinating talking to my little boy. He's 7 years old now, and I've obviously not told him to go around school saying what the truth is and stuff, but he knows. He just gets it. It's like the younger mind can totally get it without just trying to prevent further corruption.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I've got a question. Have you ever come into contact with air traffic control systems in your job?
No. I'm familiar with it though, but not like. No, I haven't through my profession. No.
They always like the fact that they see the whole world as a planar as a cylinder of which they are the center, right?
Yeah.
And everything's described to them. So they work all day on a flat plane, but they must dream of balls at night, because.
Yeah. I was on a flight back from Florida September last year, and I had a few beers inside me on the flight. And I stood at the front waiting for the toilet, and the pilot came out, and I had to say something. Yeah, we had a good chat for half an hour, but he was still, refusing it, even though he'd go back into his cockpit and look at his horizon to his eye level and calibrate the ground and all that kind of stuff. It's just crazy, I guess some people are just scared to, admit the truth, to ruin their profession, but that's just weak-mindedness in my opinion. We've got to do something about this. Something's got to be done, right?
I even wonder if it would even affect their profession. I think the only thing it affects is the stature or the position they hold in the eyes of other people.
Well, it's his perception of how people perceive him. That's the worst thing about it, right?
That's it.
It's just his wee vision of how he looks that's worrying him.
Exactly.
I've got no problem that he flies the plane the next day if he thinks it's flat. I mean, I'd love it. I mean, everybody, they all should be.
Yeah.
But he seems to think it will probably knock his stature, as you said, Dale.
Doesn't matter if he believes in the flying spaghetti monster. It doesn't knock his ability to perform the task at hand. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's always.
Sorry, Derek, for cutting you in there. I guess my biggest frustration at the moment is just seeing that when you go online to like the newbie, if they were to search flat Earth, we all know it's heavily censored, and they've got a load of shit on pole position on Google. Type it into Google itself, you've just come up with the Flat Earth Society. It's a pain in the ass, but I just know within myself that there are people out there that are not going to let this go.
No.
And I'm not letting it go. Wherever I go, I'm dropping the seed and doing my bit too. But
exactly.
There must be other people out there that haven't spoken to you yet or joined your show, but there must be more of us. Like, I'm not going to let this go. It's never going anywhere.
I think,
and there's more to it than just flat Earth.
Of course. There's a complex layers of being in the self as well, which are hugely relevant and important. But that aspect of it's not going away, I think that's an inevitability, and any sort of intelligence agency would understand that, which is why for me I see a real operation to try and not so much contain it to the point of making it go away, but certainly to direct it and direct attention and the level of mindset for whatever may come our way in the future. I can see aspects of that, but I really think, it doesn't take a lot to work out if their intelligence agencies are or to the intellect that I expect them to be, then they know that they're not putting this back in the bag. It's you can't make this go away now. You know, it's even if you look back at supposed history, it's never went away. You know, now we're in a time of being able to share information easier and connect to each other quicker, which is to the detriment of any bullshit and lies. So you can see that they're putting methods in place to try and corral it into some other avenue or whatever may be in the future. And I think that's where people's attentions need to be, is to be wary of that, you know, because people are not thinking about that. People are just caught up in the fight, and I think they would lose focus and just accept any revelation or offer of white flag that came their way, you know, without ever questioning what's actually going on with the next narrative. You know what I mean, if that makes sense. But
yeah. I think so too, Dale. The people will surrender to whatever onslaught comes, you know, after so much time, because at some point, you know, they could, I don't know, wear you out, right?
Right.
But people need to be very wary that, you know, when they bring the next paradigm into place, you know, whatever, aliens, you know, because, you know, whatever, you know, then people need to understand how they've been deceived the first time to stop it happening again.
That's it. And that's it. When you hear
that's why it's a huge, you know.
When you hear people saying that, there's much merit. Well, that for me is the fundamentals. It's the operations of the being, the individual, and how they're functioning, and how their minds function, and how they're discerning and filing and taking in information and processing that. That's the important aspect, because if you sort that out, then it doesn't matter what comes your way, because people now have the tools and the equipped to deal with it. Whereas if you don't instill that, then you're just going to get more of the same. You know, it might be some new narrative or a different way of life or whatever, but people are still going to be at the same level. So,
do you think some people are just like, from my opinion, from my point of view, I think some people are just too heavily brainwashed. You know, some people I pin down every day. I mean, it's got to the point now where I probably put them off it, admittedly. But again, because of this whole like weird ego thing that I'm letting go of, if you will. But yeah. I don't know. It's frustrating, but you know, what do I want from it? At the end of the day, I've got my truth in my family. We all know what the situation is. Even my own mother's a bit like, oh, I don't want to hear about it. I live in my own bubble.
Yeah. I think you're always going to have aspects of that, but when it reaches the majority, you know what these people are like. They'll just go with the flow. You know, again, that's no something that I think's a good point, but it is an inevitability. That people will eventually go, oh, well, it's trendy now, so it's all right for me to say it. I accept it now because it's trending, or other people in my social circles are now talking about it, and it's cool to be the flat earth guy now, so therefore I believe it, although they might not fully understand it. I think you're always going to have an aspect of that.
Yeah, people will just be superficial at looking at it because they're... Yeah, and it might be legitimate, Dale. Again, no judgment, you know, because depending on your circumstance, how much time, you know, you can actually afford to spend and thinking about topics like this is...
it's not for everybody.
It's not trivial, no?
No, it's not for everybody, as you say, Gav, that's it. So... Well, guys, I'm going to call it a day. Ashley, cheers for coming on.
Yeah, no,
me too.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated. I just wanted to finally have a chat, really. So,
well, you know, you've
made
the contact now, and you've done it, so you're welcome. As I say, it's not a one ticket thing, mate. You know, people can come and go as they please. It's an open platform, so send the email in, and if you're on the list there, I'll give you the link whenever it's there. You know, so.
That's great. No, much appreciated. All right. Well, cheers, guys. Keep it up, yeah. And,
nice one.
Hold strong.
Cheers, my man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Easy.
Cheers. Bye.
Right. Gav, you have you as well? Okay, right, we'll just shut that. Right. Cheers, everybody. I'll see you very soon. Mods, as always, much appreciated. Everybody for joining in and all that stuff. I'll see you soon, people. Take care of yourselves. Bye now.